Hi, so today we're gonna score the MFUN. So you will need your examiner's manual, which looks like this. And you will also need your record form, which looks like this. It's kind of it's a big booklet. It has all the scoring for all the tests. So to score each activity, you would pick the number 0 through 3 of what the child performed at, so 0 being unable to perform and 3 being mastered. So when you have circled all of those numbers for each activity, you add your scores up. So you would do something out of 12, something out of 8, something out of 10, and then it would be a total. So when you have completed the scoring for all the items for the 3 tests, so for visual motor, fine motor, and gross motor, you add all their numbers up and put a raw score down here. So we are just gonna put random numbers because we didn't do this. So we'll do 83, 110 for fine motor, and gross motor will be 90. So once you have your raw scores, you then go to the examiner's manual and you go to Appendix B. So then on Appendix B, you will find the raw score in this column for visual motor. So our raw score is 83, which comes out to a scaled score of 19. Oh, I'm sorry. The ages, you have to look at the ages. So Susie is 4 years old and 6 months, so 4, 6. So we would go to a score of 83, which is at 17, and we'd write 17 under this column. And then 110 is at 15. And for gross motor, we're at 90, so that is at 11. And then you come down here to the confidence interval section, and you decide what confidence interval you're gonna use. So we're gonna use 90 for this. So we put a 90 in this white box over here. But then you also determine for each of the sections how many scaled points. So for visual motor, there's 2. For fine motor, there's 1, and for gross motor, there's also 1. And then you would just add, plus or minus those scaled points to the scaled score. So for 17, we would do 15 to 19. Fine motor is 14 to 16, and gross motor is 10 to 12. And then you go ahead and go to Appendix C, and you look up the scaled score. So for visual motor, we have 17, and you find the matching percentile rank of 19, and you write that down in the column. So for visual motor, it's 99. For fine motor, it's 95, and for gross motor, it's 63. And then similar to how you would do the scaled score points for the confidence interval, you do the same thing for the percentile rank. So I would then look up the percentile rank for 15, which is 95, and the percentile rank for 19, which is 99.9. You do this for fine motor and gross motor as well. And this just gives you the percent of children tested that are equal to or less than you at those tests. And then you turn to Appendix D, where you go to your age. I'm sorry, you don't go to your age. You look up your raw score. So I would go to the ages 4 to 7 and 11 months, and my raw score for fine motor is 83. So I'm looking for 83, which is right here, which is the equivalent of 6 years and 6 months. So I would indicate that on our scoring sheet. And then for a raw score of 110 for fine motor, I go to, it's right here. So it would be over 7 years and 11 months. So this 4-year-old is pretty advanced in their fine motor skills. And then for gross motor, I find 90, which is right here. And so that would be at 4 years and 11 months. So once you have these scores, you turn to your first sheet and you kind of fill in the exact same information. So you go to the raw score here, so 83, 110, 90, scaled score, which we already found, so 17, 15, 11. So scaled score confidence interval, so 90% again. And we would put that as 15 to 19, 14 to 16, and then 10 to 12. So once you have those, then you come down to this wonderful chart looking thing and you put an X at the scaled score. So for visual motor, we're at 17, so you put an X right across the dot. For fine motor, we're at 15, so you put an X across this dot. And then for gross motor, we're at 11, so you put another X through that dot. And then to determine progress scores, so this would be the first time we were testing Susie. We put today's date, so 4/11/18. Her age is 4 years, 6 months. So her raw score, visual motor, 83. And then her raw score for fine motor, 110. And raw score for gross motor is 90. And then we turn to Appendix E and we look up her raw score. So for a raw score of 83, for her age group, she is at 559. We mark that in our score sheet. All right, to find the raw score for fine motor, so you find the raw score here for her age group, which is 623, and you mark it on your score sheet. And then you go to her gross motor. So her gross motor raw score is 90, you find 90. You go over to gross motor, you find her age group, and it's 517. And then you move on to this other chart that looks similar to the one we did for performance score. And this one is progress. So you would do it over 3 different test dates. So for the first test date, you make a circle. For the second test date, you make a triangle. And for the third test date, you make an X through the number. So now we're gonna plot our scores. So our visual motor, our score is 559. So I would make a circle as close to 559, which indicates that was her first time, and you check progress based on that. So her fine motor score is 623. Make a circle, and then her gross motor is 517. So I find 517 and plot it. So that is her progress score, and then you would move on to the next or another page in the manual. You turn to this neurological foundations profile. And for this page, this is kind of to figure out if there is a deficiency or any limitations in the child's performance in a specific area. So you would go to the specific activity, so either Amazing Races, race car, and it goes all the way down for each visual motor, fine motor, gross motor. And if for any of the activities that Susie scored a 0 or 1, I would circle that number. So let's say I wanted she did go fishing, and for activity number 2, for bilateral coordination, she scored a 0, 1. I would circle it and kind of circle the item too. It's just to let you know, kind of inform you that that's an area that the child is not performing in as well as she or he could or should be, which might indicate a deficiency. Okay, so the last part of the scoring is for this TEPS observations checklist. So the MFUN, this kind of checklist is given. So there's a home checklist, a school checklist, and a test observation checklist. So we're gonna do the test observation checklist, and that's gonna be done by the tester while you are conducting the test. So the child is not directly answering these, you're observing behaviors. So anything from mobility, posture stability, regulation, sensory modulation, self-esteem, social skills, communication, organization, speed, and participation over time. And so for each of the items, you mark almost always successful, frequently successful, occasionally successful, seldom successful, and not observed. There's 25 items. So let's say that Susie got a 10 for almost always, frequently successful also got a 10, and then occasionally successful got a 5. So once you have the total, then you multiply the almost always by 3, so 30, and then the frequently successful gets multiplied by 2, 20, and the occasionally successful multiplied by 1, so 5. And so we have a total score of 55 out of 75 total points. And so then you would turn to Appendix F, and so we're in the test observation section, and we find Susie's age, which is 4-6, and so Susie got a 55, which, as indicated, is below average. She got a 55. So then we turn to page 1 of our scoring booklet. And so we wouldn't do home observations or classroom observations, but we do test, and so we put a 55 here, and we mark below average.